Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Throttle Stop Garage. Okay, in today's episode, so last episode we got the backing plate put in behind the pedals for the racing pedals. So this is going to be part 3 in the how to install race pedals into your project car video series here on Throttle Stop Garage. And we're going to have a look at just fixing up all the little odds and ends, right? So I guess this is kind of the way I work. I don't know how you work, but the way I work is sort of big pieces go together first, and then I start refining and keep working away on the details. So at this point, I'm short mostly brackets and stupid stuff that I don't like doing while I'm building. If I can mount and support things, I do. So we got to get the brackets done in there. I don't want to leave this part of the project like I've done before in the past. I don't want to leave this part of the project until we're actually stitched up and done. So we get brackets put in, we'll get the weld nuts done. We're going to get all of those things finished. All right, let's get ready to roll. First up, just drawing out, getting everything laid out to finally put the brake in that floor panel. So I finally had to give up and just get that job done. There's no way to fit this stuff up without that. So out comes a little digital protractor. I'd actually measured the angles for a change, so get the right location, get the angles right, and everything should work out okay. There's first test fit in the car. Still struggling with those pieces not fitting quite right on the bracketry in the middle, but so there it comes in. And then I noticed that things weren't quite square, and I thought I'd square up the panel. So that was me just changing my mind right there, going, no, don't cut the panel. The panel just needed to rotate in up against the tunnel. And this is when I started to have doubts about not having the tunnel actually put into the car. So yeah, I start fitting up the side bracket parts there. So I just put a cleco in either end. Then you can do your test fit with just the cleco in it. And then I can go ahead, tunnel in, tunnel out, play around with it a little bit. Anyway, and then you can go ahead and drill and put the weld nuts in those holes. So I finally decided to put this tunnel in. I need all the parts back in, so you just saw the foot bulge there, the pedal cluster going in. Finally tuning all the edges. The flanges aren't perfect, so now they're perfect. Marking it off here for spot weld holes. Get the punch out, and then let's just hammer this thing in. Yeah, it's awfully cold, so just warming up the flange, getting it ready to accept paint. It was never going to dry if it wasn't warm first. All right, in we go. Final fitment time. This is always the moment of truth, right? When you're just about to weld it in. I cut out all the parts where I measured things about 500 times, so I didn't think that was doing anyone any good, especially me. So in, out, in, out. Final checks, few clamps. There it is. Now she's attached to the car for the first time. No going back now, right? Actually pretty happy with the way this all went in. I got it all done in one 3-hour evening session, and then it all got put in. So just chasing those holes as I go. There's some work going on underneath. So every once in a while I gotta tap the floor up from below, so you'll see me pop in and pop out of the car, and that's what I'm up to there. And then as I get going on the flange, I needed to tag the back of the tunnel down, so it gets tagged back down. And then as we go, we're gonna start chasing that flange, right? So I've got that brick chisel that I use just as a chasing tool, just to sort of flatten those two pieces out, make sure they're fitting nice and tight together before I put the welds in. So that's all popping in nicely here. Off to the other side. The only thing I did here was there was a spot on the sheet metal that always bothered me. You see the camera moving around. I'm surprised it didn't fall over. And I went under there and just massaged that sheet, got a couple of tacks in it, gave it a few whacks, and it went right into the shape that I wanted. So Rather be lucky than good, right?
So all that we managed to get done in the last little bit, and it hasn't been a whole lot. I've been super busy at work, really. It's work takes away from time in the garage for me, just like it does for everybody else. But I did manage to get that transmission tunnel welded in earlier this week. It feels fantastic to get that in. Now I needed to put that in because as I was working on the bottom foot panel, right, the flat panel on the bottom, I could move that transmission tunnel around just a little bit, and I mean, a millimeter here and there is going to be the difference between when if I was welding in the trans tunnel in later, be the difference between having it weld in and having the holes slot right in place, and not being able to get those holes welded in at all. So for the first part, I guess I've got to get that fitted in now. Like, it's the transmission tunnel's in, so I'll get that floor panel final fitted. And then we're going to start putting the weld nuts and things together, right? So we're going to come back to weld nuts, so I'll bring it back towards me. You can see the little protrusion. Now, instead of if you tried to do this drilling holes in sheet metal, it usually leads to one really common problem, which is the three-sided hole. And there's other videos on YouTube that can explain why that happens. Half the time that happens because the angle on your drill isn't right. So remember, you're not working with a 135-degree tip. You actually want that at about 100, that standard 118 degrees does work a whole lot better. So you could try that. That'll help you drill a rounder hole. And the best way to do it, of course, is to punch the holes. So fresh in for one of my punches is a set of dies that will allow me to punch the correct hole for my weld nuts, right? So these are metric weld nuts. The size that I have to have here, I didn't have in my collection for my punches. So they were just a little bit, they were either a little tight or a little loose. And that's the way that sheet metal punches are normally sized, right? They're usually used for clearance holes, right? For a lot of things. So why have it as a tight hole? Anyway, so we'll be punching most of the holes. Anywhere that I can get the punch in and punch the hole, I'll punch it. And in the locations where I'm not able to punch the holes and I have to drill it, I've set up the drill and the drill press with, it's actually it's a numbered, is it a numbered or a lettered drill? It's a lettered drill. It's a lettered drill that allows me to fit it in nice and tight. Again, we can't be adding error every time we put a nut in, or else you'll end up with panels that don't fit, great big sloppy holes everywhere. So in the last part of this episode, we're going to get a little bit machinist here and try to lay these holes out nicely. All right, with that, let's get to work.
Just layout work. I hadn't appreciated how many holes I was laying out and how many lines and things I was drawing on this until I started putting this episode together. Just epic piles of layout. In total, just for those that are interested, this is almost 2 weeks worth of work just to get this done. Now, I'm not at it every day, clearly. I mean, I'm out there every evening and as many hours on the weekend as can be tolerated, but it's not every day. Anyway, still, ton of layout. Just a ton of layout. So, with the tunnel in, we can now start fitting this up in earnest, which I've done. And cleco those parts back in, and then use some transfer punches to transfer the hole locations for those holes that I've just punched out. So that all worked out well. The punch actually that I have will not be able to punch a hole in a 16 gauge. And here's the new toy. So I bought a spot welder. There'll be a video later on how this thing actually works, but holy, was that fast. Just bingo bango and I was done. So a little bit of knocking the spot weld burrs off and everything's bolted back together. And this spot welder is getting a workout, I'll tell you. For each one of those weld nuts, there's 2 spot welds, and there's a lot of fasteners in this project. All right, back to that rib piece. You saw how I didn't like the way it fit before, and now I like the way it fits a little better. I just keep refining it. All right, final layout on the floor. Getting all those pieces in. It's really important that the fasteners, because the clearances are so small for how I built those parts, like I didn't leave any clearance. The weld nuts just fit inside the channels, so you have to be really accurate with how those holes lay out, or else things aren't going to go well. So just a quick test fit. And out comes that spot welder again. Compared to welding it on with my MIG, this thing just saved so much time, so much grinding. Do wear a face shield though, because for every one of those spot welds it's sparking. The first time I used it, it caught me right in the head. Alright, here's a little bracket just to go underneath, to support a little open area right underneath my feet. Just a stupid little bracket, like it takes an evening to do. In, done, finished. Alright, now we start test fitting this toe panel in. So it's going to go in and I'm going to sit and look at it for half an hour or more. The pedals have to go back in, like just in and out with parts, in and out with parts, in and out with parts, right? Just, again, you never appreciate how long it takes until you do it. So now it's laid out. There, holes punched for that the back bracket that we made in the last episode. Then we lay out for the weld nuts. Get the layout done, pop the holes, and then we'll use that same trick where we're going to pop the holes first, attach the part, transfer punch to make sure they're centered on the holes. Then now my punch can go through 18 gauge. It makes a heck of a wallop when it goes through. And then we spot weld those weld nuts on. And now they're finished up. Alright, then the bottom half. Now the bottom half is going to be, aside from the one in the corner that I just put in there by the accelerator pedal, the rest of them are all going to be aluminum into aluminum. So I'm using a 304 stainless riv nut in those positions. So I've got the riv nut tool out, drill the holes for the riv nut, and then get rid of that plastic out of the way because I don't want it to be lingering around, getting in my way later. So tear the plastic out, put the riv nuts in. Sorry, I was out of frame the whole time there, but and then I got one wrong, right? So you have to whack those. If you do that riv nut right, then the edge of the riv nut will be zero, like absolutely clamped tight to the side of the plate. Alright, last set of brackets. Boy, how many more brackets can we have on this one part? I made 8 of these, but I made them all at once. I wasn't too... Again, how many holes am I laying out here? Just hundreds of holes. Alright, sheet metal brake comes out. Got to get a couple little bends and things. Off we go to the bead roller smashing it in. First lines, then I just take the bottom die out, replace it with the skateboard wheel because I need to tip another angle up. Skateboard wheel on the bottom there, it just gives a place for that. It's just a little softer. Then I put my tipping die in because I need a little bit more angle out of the whole thing, and I couldn't get enough angle on it. I couldn't hold it up either. I was using the wrench there to try to hold that panel up. So finally I go for 2 pieces of channel and a chisel, and I whack that thing into the shape that I want. Again, I want it to be sort of minimal in size. Alright, more holes to lay out. And a whole bunch of brackets getting made at once here, so. Just a few holes, eh? All gotta be center punched. Drilled. Can't punch it. Wish I would have punched it first. You know, that would have been smart. 3 different sizes of holes, right? You got the 1/8 to start the hole, and then the smaller hole for the spot weld, and the bigger clearance hole to fit the weld nut through. I can punch the edges, thank goodness. Alright, now finally we can compare the time that it takes to put the weld nut in, so just start the timer. Right? Each one of these weld nuts, 2 welds, plus the grind. I've only got 16 holes to weld shut. This took almost an hour to do. I would have had that if I could have got the spot welder in there, right? So much time saved. And finally cutting them all up. These are the brackets that are going to go in on the sides, right? To hold that toe plate in on the side. Finally, the big bracket that's going to go right underneath where the dead pedal is, just to make sure I don't deform that aluminum when I get all those parts in. So it's a tricky bracket to make, actually. And it's installed. All done. final bits of layout for the side, where those side brackets go, and they're done.
All right, I've made the hard decision to actually wrap up the episode here. There's no chance that I'm going to get all of this finished even during this week. So I'm going to be into the weekend finishing up this project. All that's left at the moment is I've got to attach the other clips onto the toe panel and the other panels that need them, and just weld them into the car. I'm waiting on some fasteners to come in for that. They'll be in later on this week. And then I've got to build the dead pedal. So I figure between those two things and a couple of other little filler pieces, we can get, not that we're trying to squeeze another episode out of the material. It's just, this video is going to be way too long. So I'm going to compress what I've got in this video so that it's tolerable, and we'll save the rest for the next video. I'll just take you for a quick trip inside the car and show you the net results of all of this work. All right, so now we can see how it all lines up and fits in. Those are the rest of the brackets that I have to put on. So those are the support brackets that go on the side of the plate. I have another one that's in behind, so you can see the fastener that's just over beside the clutch pedal there. It's bolting into a 4-inch wide bracket that attaches to the firewall. So it doesn't matter how hard I push these pedals, I'm not going to make them, I won't push them right out. So the fun part is, each and every one of those holes, they all have to line up perfectly, or none of this is going to work. Now, I sort of became aware as I was getting it all put together that I probably have twice the number of fasteners in here that I need. But better too many fasteners than not enough. I don't want this plate vibrating. Once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this particular adventure in this episode. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work just for everything that you can't see, right? It's the most amusing part of this entire episode is at the end of the day, it's just plates that sit on the floor to help you get the right feel and around your pedals when you're driving. So feel is super important to me actually in a car. I'm not sensitive to noise, harshness, and vibration. I'm super sensitive to angles and feel. Anyway, so I hope I have it right. Please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode.